Well, hey folks, Real Lawsuit with Red Loans, which was worse, episode 6, where I'm going to talk about the WCW International title and the WWE Universal title. A quick rundown of these the which was worse concept. Basically, I take two topics that have some similarities. In this case, two main roster titles that were lazily booked and, to me, lazily creatively done as far as like the concepts of them and everything. And then I figure out which was worse by the end of this show. I did the same when I talked about the fallout from Goldberg and Asuka's undefeated streaks. And, Nash and Hogan's title reign from earlier, Samoa Joe and CM Punk's title reigns in 08. The, the whole point is I come up with just various aspects of why which one was worse. And this isn't going to be a full-blown rant. This is going to be a little bit analytical and just me as a wrestling fan observing and talking about what I've observed and stuff like that, not being a wrestling journalist or reporter and that kind of stuff. I just want to make that clear. And thank you to everybody that has suggested topics for this. And also a big thank you to @Hitman683 for the suggestion for this show, for this show's theme. I really do appreciate it. So anyway, without further ado, you asked her at the beginning to figure out which one was worse. Back in 1993 for the International title, you had Barry Windham as NWA champion heading into Beach Blast 93. Ric Flair beats him. Ric Flair is now NWA champion once again. And then in September of 93, the NWA and WCW have basically a bit of a falling out. So, WCW International title is a name that's created. And, it's the NWA title, but it's just international title. So it's it's a pretty stupid name. But with the right talent, they could have made that thing just mean a whole lot. And they started out with Rick Rude beating Ric Flair at Fall Brawl 93, I believe. And that was a pretty big moment because Rick Rude had deserved to be champion in a main promotion for a good while. I believe he was a champion in WCCW, but at that point, even in the late 80s, it had kind of fallen on its ass. He never got his just due as a main roster or a main champion in WWE. So and he'd had some championship success in WCW already, and then it had an injury that took him out of having a WCW title, I believe, in very end of '92. So Rick Rude was made the WCW International Heavyweight Champion and held it for a pretty damn long time. Held it into I believe March of '94, to where he dropped it to Hiroshi Hase, I think is how you say it. I'm not too familiar with the guy's name. I had to look that up, so I hope I said that name right. He only held it for 8 days. I was on a Japanese tour. And then Rude won it back. And then Sting won it. But then Rude had suffered an injury, a back injury. That was a back injury that unfortunately ended his career. And so Sting was made the champion. And then what you basically had was, Sting was the champion. Then he fought Ric Flair soon after, but Sting would not accept the title just being handed to him, so he faced Vader at Slamboree 94. He beat Vader for it, and then lost it to Flair like a month later, and then Flair became the last WCW International Champion, and then was just, then they unified the belts when he faced Hogan at Bash at the Beach 94. So yeah, that's a brief rundown of the WCW International Championship. This isn't going to be a very, very long show, so that was pretty quick, like as far as how I described it. Rick Rude was a hell of a champion though. In the two combined reigns that he had, he held it for over 200. He held it for like over 200 days. I think it was like 202 days. Sting, I think, held it for like a little bit, but he really wasn't much. He didn't hold it for too long. That was when the main title scene was such a mess, which is a shame. Because you look at all the freaking title, like the great talent that they had or whatever. I mean, after losing to Rick Rude at Fall Brawl 93, Flair ends up subbing in for Sid because of the whole Arn Anderson scissors incident, and beats Vader at Starrcade 93. That would have certainly been interesting if they had done another unification, or they'd done a unification match and that kind of stuff at that time. But they wanted to have two WCW World Champions and eventually have a unification match, which is what they ended up doing with Flair and Hogan much later, which is why they gave it back to Flair, because they wanted to have Flair and Hogan do the match that WWE never did in 92, and I still don't understand to this day why they didn't, even though I love Savage and Flair. But anyway, that's a brief rundown of the WCW International Heavyweight title. had a couple really good talents. I mean, Hiroshi Hase, or however you say his name, I'm not too familiar with. He seems to be spoken highly of, like among New Japan, All Japan. So, and I believe he got into politics after his wrestling career was winding down. So that's fantastic. And it wouldn't be the first time the titles were traded back and forth and everything on international tours. Flair did that in Puerto Rico sometimes with the NWA title to avoid having riots, because Puerto Rican fans get really fired up about their home country favorites winning a match. But the whole point is for 9-10 months you had two respective world champions, and then eventually blew that off at Bash at the Beach '94, where you just combined the titles, and it was what it was. It did lead to some great business, and Rick Rude did the damn best he could, but it always felt like a consolation prize. Like, here, Rick, we don't want to make you the champion, but we're going to give you this belt. But we're part of from the NWA, so we're going to give you a stupid name like the WCW International Heavyweight Champion. Rick Rude carried himself like a champion, don't get me wrong. The guy was a hell of a talent. It's a damn shame that he had to retire when he did. But anyway, that's a brief rundown of that. The Universal title is going to be pretty easy to run down, because there's only been 5 champions. There's been 5 champions. I almost forgot about the first one. It was created heading into SummerSlam 2016. This is right after the second brand split had started just recently. They decided to have a tournament that determined they decided to have a small tournament, who would become the new champion. And it ended up being Seth Balor, because that's one thing that Michael Cole said, but Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor at SummerSlam 2016, and Seth Rollins lost to Finn Balor. Finn Balor unfortunately hurt his shoulder during this, and the fans did do a whole bunch of chants or whatever thing. Your belt sucks. Hey, we want a new belt. Jam belt. It was ridiculous. They may have not done the jam belt one, but a lot of people on Twitter were saying that. But Finn Balor wins. Finn Balor wins the title, and he's supposed to be rocketed up and everything. But unfortunately, due to how he took the buckle bomb on the barricade, he ends up popping his shoulder out. To be fair, I don't think Balor would have had the title very long. I think the idea was always to give it to Kevin Owens, and that's what ended up happening about 8 days later. They had a fatal 4-way. I believe it was a fatal 4-way, and then you had Owens become the champion. And, because Triple H helped him out and everything. And Kevin Owens actually ended up being the second longest reigning Universal Champion, where he held it from just after SummerSlam 2016 to Fastlane 2017, where during that time, he feuded with Seth Rollins in a pretty good Hell in a Cell match, honestly, even with the interference. He did have some pretty good matches. He had a pretty good match with Roman Reigns at the 2017 Rumble, where Braun interfered and he had Jericho in a shark cage or everything, where he was hanging up like a sexy piñata, as Chris Jericho said. And then what you had him lose the title to Goldberg in like a 20-second match, and that's because you had Chris Jericho, his music hit, and he distracted Owens, and just as the bell rang, spear, jackhammer, 1, 2, 3, because Goldberg couldn't work a very long match because he was still rehabbing his shoulder, because he tore his shoulder doing the clotheslines, like throwing security guards around and everything, because he was older and he was kind of injury prone. But anyway, Goldberg goes into WrestleMania, drops it to Brock Lesnar, and at least it made up for their Mania 20 match. I mean, that was about it. It's pretty sad that their 2016 Survivor Series match and their Mania 33 match weren't even as close as the length of their Mania 20 match, but both were way more action-packed. I mean, way more impactful for the right reasons. So Goldberg's champion, drops it to Brock Lesnar, and Brock Lesnar does not defend the title that much, and I get it. They were trying to build up anticipation, but he waited a few months, defended it at Great Balls of Fire. Yes, that was a pay-per-view. Defended against Samoa Joe. Defended in actually a pretty damn good 4-way, so he beat Samoa Joe. And pretty good 4-way at SummerSlam against Braun, Reigns, and Samoa Joe. That was a damn good match, actually. Then defending against Braun Strowman at No Mercy 2017, a pretty lazy match. He faced AJ Styles in a champion match at Survivor Series. That thankfully wasn't Brock versus Jinder Mahal. And then he faces Kane and Braun at the Royal Rumble 2018, where you had Braun inadvertently hit Lesnar pretty hard. So Lesnar stiffs him by trying to punch Strowman's skull away from his body, and it almost looked like he could have. That was a pretty cool moment. And then one of the worst matches that WWE's put on in a while, you had Brock and Reigns in a Mania 34 main event, and their Mania 31 match for the WWE title was pretty good. It wasn't great. I don't think it was as great as everybody says, but it was what it was. But anyway, so Brock, you're thinking he's going to drop the title and whatever. Well, he doesn't drop the title. He busts Reigns open, and then, or Reigns blades or whatever, but neither here nor there. Reigns was bleeding something fierce, so if it was fake blood, that's a lot. But anyway, Reigns loses, and we're like, what the hell? Like they're prolonging the story just to annoy people. And then at the Greatest Royal Rumble, Brock ends up retaining via a stupid cage spot and everything. And then you go to SummerSlam, where they had to do all this stupid gimmicky shit with Braun teasing the cash-in so fans wouldn't leave, and you had Braun and Roman Reigns, having some tension and everything, because they had that great feud in 2017. And Brock and Reigns end up Roman accidentally takes out Braun. He didn't mean to, but then you got, of course, or maybe he did mean to, whatever. Maybe the spot was just done bad. But yeah, Brock basically decided to just destroy Braun, throws the briefcase so damn hard, he hits an LED light, and then Reigns spear, 1, 2, 3. And then that. So now you got Reigns in the middle of it, because I'm filming this in the middle of October. You got Roman, who has not been a very good Universal Champion, and through no fault of his own. He's trying. I'm not saying he isn't, but the booking has just not been there. That Hell in a Cell main event with Braun was absolute shit. And then you got the match that's supposed to be coming up with Braun and Brock. But taking a look at the totality of both titles and what the title has meant, I almost want to say that the Universal title has meant less, because for this reason. Balor's title reign got cut short. Kevin Owens was not really all that well booked. Goldberg as champion, it was a cool moment, but you didn't necessarily care. At least I didn't care necessarily. And then Brock's title reign of 500 whatever days, or 450 days, I don't remember how long it was. It was shit. It was shit because it meant absolutely nothing. The title, a couple of the title matches weren't that bad. Like I said, that SummerSlam 4-way was fine. But then you had Reigns beat him at SummerSlam, and it's gone over like a popcorn fart, and due a large part to the bad booking. You look back at the WCW International title. Rick Rude was the guy that they could have built that around. And he tried. He really, really, really tried. But it ended up meaning absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing, because they just used it as a vehicle. Once Hogan came in, Rude and Sting fought over it. Then, they traded back and forth a little bit. Rude got injured. Sting won it, by beating Vader at Slamboree, as I said, and then dropped it to Flair like a month later. So even with Rick Rude's hard work in 202 days as champion over 2 reigns, WCW International title is basically a footnote. The problem is the Universal title doesn't even feel as important as the Intercontinental title. Because even when it's in the main event, the title just has this weird stain and stench of death upon it. It has never been booked all that well. And if you keep doing dodgy finishes, it doesn't really work. It doesn't make the title seem all that good. And when Brock Lesnar is your main champion and defended the title, let's see, Joe, SummerSlam, he defended it, 6 times? And there are people that try to say, oh, well, look at what Okada did in New Japan. He defended it 12 times or something like that over the course of almost 2 years. Yes, but he was wrestling every single night. In tag matches and stuff like that, in a way to set up feuds. There's also 2 completely different companies. But I'm also going to do the next Which Was Worse, I'm going to do, by the way. So Which Was Worse, ultimately, I will say the Universal title. Because the WCW International title, at least Rude tried. Also, WCW trying to create 2 champions at that point was a little shitty. But the Universal title has ultimately been much more of a flop. It really has been now. Could it change? Absolutely. If we were to talk about the first 10 months of this title, hate to say it, Universal title would still be worse. Because within the first 10 months, you had 3 different champions. And, Owens, the longest reigning champion at that time until Brock ended up holding it forever, wasn't able to do all that much, even though he really, really tried and deserved that title. Anyway, I'm going to say the Universal title is ultimately more of a flop. The next Which Was Worse I'm going to do is going to be talking about SummerSlam endings. It's going to be comparing the 2018 SummerSlam ending and the SummerSlam 93 ending. I'm going to talk about which was worse and for various reasons. And the answer might surprise you. But anyway, that's what I have to say. So which title did you feel was worse? Are there other titles you would like me to compare? Please make sure that is from WCW, WWE. It could be ECW if you want, but WCW, WWE, you can do Impact if you would like. Let me know which titles you would like me to compare in the comments below. Anyway, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. It's been Real Honesty with John Rippland, and I will see you soon.